Hello, this is Dr. Michael Shear with LearnLOCATOR-F-Tx, a comprehensive clinical and laboratory education for the Zest Dental Solutions LOCATOR-F-Tx fixed attachment system. In this video, I'm going to be demonstrating using my intraoral scanner to scan my F-Tx prosthesis. First and foremost, we need to define the work order or the laboratory prescription. We indicate the patient's name, the laboratory we're going to use, and in this case, it's going to be my OpenSTL format. Choose all of our information, make sure the scanner is set up properly. Choose the lower scan, and now we're ready to go ahead and begin scanning for our F-Tx prosthesis. First and foremost, we're going to simulate scanning on a laboratory benchtop model and then demonstrate in the mouth. First and foremost, we remove the F-Tx interim prosthesis. This is simulating that the patient has been using an interim F-Tx prosthesis for a period of time, either after surgery or in a delayed conversion type case. This time is going to allow the patient to test the prosthesis, phonetics, aesthetics, stability, everything to make sure that he or she likes it. Once confirmed, we remove the F-Tx prosthesis, place our F-Tx housings with the black inserts, and now we're going to go ahead and reorient our housings with those black inserts or retention balls to the proper orientation of how we would like our F-Tx prosthesis to be picked up in the final. And that's typically straight up and down or vertical. Activating my intraoral scanner, we start scanning from the occlusal and then across the arch. It's important during our F-Tx full arch Edentulous scans for our prostheses that everything remains pretty stable and still. So not shown here because we're working on a laboratory model, we're going to verify that my assistant is properly retracting all the soft tissues to make sure all the tissues on the lingual and the buccal remain taut or tight. As I use my intraoral scanner, I'm going to pivot occlusally, buccal, lingually, until I capture the anatomy and detail of the edentulous ridge. Note here that I also utilize the intraoral scanner to ensure that I'm capturing properly the F-Tx housings. As I pivot my intraoral scanner around, I'm going to contort the angle that I hold my intraoral scanning at, being mindful not to touch the actual F-Tx abutment. Avoiding touching the F-Tx abutment will allow the scanner to work properly because any contact with the intraoral scanner could displace the actual F-Tx abutment housing. Once I complete my initial scan, I'm going to inspect my scan for thoroughness and completeness. Ideally, we want to make sure that as we toggle back and forth between the color mode and the surface scan in this particular scanner, it's going to demonstrate the areas that we need to add to ensure we have a proper scan of the F-Tx housings and the edentulous ridge. Note here that when I rescan that portion of the patient's edentulous ridge, it picks back up at the point of where the F-Tx housings are. As I inspect the scan further, I'm continuing to note that there's a couple of little areas that are shown as voids, and you'll notice here it's those clear areas just below the F-Tx housings themselves. And in this particular scanner, you can designate a color that will show you where you have a portion of the scan missing. As I return to that area and activate the scanner, it picks up those little details, filling in those little voided areas in a matter of a few moments. As I get close to being completed on the scan, I continue to pick up those small little depths and details and then pause the scanner to further inspect. Turning on my surface scan mode will ensure that I've got proper anatomy captured all the way around. Now at this point, what I'm going to do is inspect in detail the ideal F-Tx fully edentulous intraoral scan impression. I'm ensuring that I'm capturing all of the relevant anatomy. The key here with this particular technique, I'm going to make sure that I've captured the F-Tx housings properly at the desired angulation, as well as enough soft tissue anatomy all the way around on the intraoral scan. Going into my next mode of my intraoral scanner, This particular scanner has a post-processing mode that we're going to post-process the scans before we move any further. At this point, it cleans up any areas that are voids or missing areas, further processing the scan for completion and thoroughness. As you can see here, we've got an ideal scan all the way around, capturing the fully edentulous ridge in this particular patient model demonstration. As shown here, we can toggle on the surface mode between the color mode to ensure that we have optimal clarity of the FTX housings as well as the edentulous ridge. As I toggle around, it should be pretty close with a high degree of fidelity to what our patient is in his or her mouth. Once I've completed, I click on the send to send myself the STL files for this particular case or to my laboratory. Once we've gone ahead and completed that particular aspect of the scan, I remove the FTX housings with the black retention balls, put them off to the side, and then I return the FTX interim prosthesis back to the patient's mouth. Now at this point, I'm going to demonstrate this technique clinically. We have here our patient wearing her FTX interim prosthesis. At this point, we're going to use our loop and bar technique to remove the prosthesis carefully. Once the prosthesis has been fully disengaged, we then go ahead and place our FTX housings with our black retention balls in place. My intraoral scanner is activated in a similar fashion as I've shown you on the laboratory benchtop. I begin by scanning the edentulous ridge, rolling buccal, lingual, buccal, and lingual, and then continuing across until I've captured the edentulous ridge completely from side to side. As I do that, I ensure that the FTX abutment housings are properly in place and nothing is being displaced while scanning. Note here that I have my dental assistant or my patient holding these metal cheek retractors. By the patient holding these metal cheek retractors is going to ensure that the buccal mucosa and labial mucosa remains taut. The key here is that you need that tissue to remain steady the entire time. As I continue and scan, I'm going to take little breaks, ensuring that I've properly captured the arch and the soft tissue completely all the way around. Once I've ensured that I have a proper capture, I run the scanner through the post-processing assembly to verify for completeness and thoroughness. After scanning the edentulous arch, I replace the FTX interim prosthesis onto the implants and abutments, placing the prosthesis from a posterior to an anterior direction. I like to use a series of cotton rolls to ensure that the prosthesis has been fully inserted, and it's important to ensure the prosthesis is fully inserted, potentially with a radiograph. Once the prosthesis is back in, I'm going to then scan the patient's prosthesis. By scanning the patient's prosthesis, I'm going to give my laboratory the prosthetic position of where the implants and the bridge are going to be. It's important when you scan the patient's interim prosthesis that you also scan all of the anatomy on the facial and lingual for the patient. Note here, in this particular example, I'm not using cheek retractors. Cheek retractors are optional. I do recommend them, especially if you are not used to intraoral scanning or you delegate this to a dental assistant. In this particular patient, I know exactly how to capture the soft tissue pretty easily. Continuing forward, I make sure that I have proper soft tissue isolation and capturing all of the relevant buccal and lingual soft tissue anatomy. Now at this point, we're going to go ahead and touch up any of those areas, finish the scan, and now I need to scan her opposing. Since my patient is wearing a maxillary complete denture, I do not need to scan that in the mouth. I will remove her denture and then utilize my intraoral scanner to scan extraorally. As I do that, I'm using all of the markers of the patient's denture to align different portions of the scan. It's important to start on the dentition and then to roll buccal lingually to capture the facial aspect of the denture completely. This is a pretty easy technique. It just takes a little bit of patience and practice to make sure that you've got these scanning workflows down. Once I've completed the maxillary scan, I place the denture back in the mouth, have the patient go into centric relation or MICP closure position, and then do a bite scan on both the left and the right side, capturing the teeth as well as the soft tissue or denture surface 2 to 3 millimeters above and below the patient's teeth. Inspecting my scan for thoroughness, I'm going to go through my post-processing assembly. In this particular scanner, it sometimes gives you this kind of goofy little bit of a swirl type of appearance, but it doesn't change the actual accuracy or precision of the scan. In this particular case, I'm going to turn on the surface mode to see how it's going to look like in your dental laboratory software or in the open source software or free software like MeshMixer. It's important for us to properly inspect each of the scans for completeness and thoroughness. Also, I recommend utilizing 2 separate scans or 2 separate sessions for your intraoral scanner. Session number 1 is going to be the patient's upper teeth and lower interim prosthesis or vice versa. The second scan is going to be the patient's edentulous ridge with the F-Tx abutments housings alone. By doing that, it's going to allow my laboratory to generate 2 files that are merged into one to make a wax up for the full arch prosthesis simplified.